part is it. I like to, we've got 2 or 3 things that are before us, I think, in this session. First of all, I'd like to clean up the outstanding resolution that's on the books right now, where we had 3 things, or I guess depending on how we look at it, 2 or 3 things that we had resolved to have be on the trial basis for 1 year, and I'd like to, in our wrap up tomorrow, be it resolved that these things that were on a trial basis for a year now become a full-fledged resolution. And these were the following. First, we said, be it resolved that definitions of formation, position, and setup in use on a trial basis for the past year be adopted. Wait a minute, that's the... that was from the year before, wasn't it? And that was already accepted. That was all... okay, I'm already... okay, I'm... that one's already taken care of. Okay, that one's already taken care of. All right, that's why I was saying either 3 or 4. Okay, so the one that was outstanding was, be it resolved that the definitions of the terms true, geographic, technical, and fractional zeros be as stated in the enclosed. Was that, how did we get by without that being on trial for... shoot. Does anyone remember? Right now... is that right? I don't think that's a big issue anyway. I think that the technical, fractional, and geographic zeros, nobody has any problem with, so I think that has been accepted in effect. Whether or not we explicitly... my current note here says doesn't say anything about a trial basis. So my resolution last year, as I'm reading it here, says, be it resolved that the definition of the terms true, geographic, technical, and fractional zeros be as stated in the enclosure, and it doesn't have a qualifier on a trial basis for 1 year. So I must infer from that it went through that way, and it's now accomplished fact. No, I've had no feedback. No problems with it. There are a few more people starting to use it, note services, caller schools, so I think that's about all we can say is that they're starting to use it, no problem with it. The problem that we had before, of course, and frankly, guys were using those terms incorrectly, and not only incorrectly, but unfortunately without full understanding. Now I think they understand, at least we're a step closer. Okay. The other... now here's one that's had limited use, and but what limited use I've seen has all been positive, and that was our 5th resolution, which was, be it resolved that the 6 boy-girl arrangements for the designated formations, and we had identified, I think, 12, be numbered 0, 1, half, 1, 2, 3, 4 per the enclosed pictograms for use on a 1-year trial basis. Yeah. Yes, and I called that to our attention, and they printed a correction on it. So I think that's a plus. The guys are starting to get educated. That's what we're in we got to recognize that we're in a educational process here, and it's a stepwise procedure, and it's all to the plus. Well, how can we answer that? I'm not aware of any. I would like to then make a resolution out of this that the one-year trial basis was effectively positive, and that we adopt it as a permanent a resolution. Any comment on that? All right, we'll do that. That takes care of the, according to my notes, that takes care of the outstanding resolutions that were on for a one-year trial basis, and we'll make them permanent. Basically, there were those two. Now, the next thing, we've got two other things that basically I want to talk about, and they are addition of several formations, namely 20, with names, and the other is our proposal last year that was defeated for the proposed formation letter designations. I'd like to, since that's a carryover, sort of a past business topic, unfinished business topic, I'd like to go to that one first. It'd be my proposal that we basically resubmit the same resolution that we did the year before, mount perhaps some better arguments for it, and go with that. And we'll talk about it in a minute. Let me just restate what that was. What we said was, be it resolved that letter designations for the indicated formations be as indicated on the enclosed list for use on a one-year trial basis, and we had the following ones listed: facing lines L, H chain through B, trade by T, double pass through P, right hand ocean waves W, right face two face lines F, right hand column C, lines facing out U, completed double pass through M, quarter tag Q, three-quarter tag R, right hand diamonds D, and I think that was the size of it. And then the left-hand versions of those with an L in front. The thing that we might want to do to make this perhaps more palatable is, again, to take small steps. And maybe instead of having, I don't know what number, but say that was 12 that I just read off, we could go with 8 of the more common formations so that it doesn't look like we're trying to overpower people with letters. Let's discuss that for a minute. Anybody have any thoughts on that, pro or con or whatever? They did blow it out. We have a, without explicitly including the left-hand formations, we have 12 that we identified. I just got them here from the place where I printed them in the little top 10 book, but we have 12 there. And those 12 formations are all pretty commonly used formations, and hence, particularly, many of you may not appreciate it totally, but for someone that's writing a note service or a communicative means, that's a very handy thing. And the argument is sometimes made that's too complex. The guys can't handle that. They can't remember those things. Well, of course, with use you can, and it comes very quickly. And if you don't use it, then you don't have to worry about it. You don't need it. If one does use it, or if one wants to use it, it's there, and he can use it. And if it turns out to be something that everybody's interested in, and he finds you have a lot of use for it, then the thing becomes known in accordance with its use, and then is not a problem. I'd like to propose that we, frankly, I'm a little with Jay there. I propose, since we did agonize about this last time, and we spent, a couple of hours on coming up with with letter designations that we could all go with, and I felt that was a pretty good answer. It was different from my original proposal, but when it was all over, I felt that we had done a logical rearrangement, and I'd like to go with those 12 and try it again. And maybe with some, if we get counter-arguments from the floor, make a couple of counter-arguments ourselves in rebuttal. It'd be good if we brought that microphone up so that, because this is being taped, so that you guys, when you talked, could talk into it. You got to turn it on. It looks like it.
Right. There's not a whole lot of enthusiasm for this whole thing. And you're facing the entrenched way of doing business. And the best way may be to start with the ones that everybody writes out all the time. And maybe just 3 or 4 or 5 of those that absolutely everybody can see a use for abbreviating.
Yes, I understand that
we can
argument.
just build from there. That's the way I think we ought to go.
I don't feel strongly against that argument, frankly. If we feel that that's got a much better chance of going, then I would be for that. Because I also feel that once we've got the concept out there and in use, adding on to it is practically an administrative action. Right. Well, okay, let's, yeah, Bruce?
I wasn't here last year, and I haven't been in on the whole discussion, but from the things that I was getting back from people who were returning to the area was that this was a silly way of doing it, was labeling these things by letters. I don't know what the...
Why was it silly, did they think?
I don't know, they just didn't feel that, hey, we got a whole bunch of formations all identified by letters. I don't know what the...
We're not saying don't use, of course, we're not saying don't use the names. We're saying in a situation where we're going to want to identify a setup with a formation and perhaps further a little along a formation symbol, it's going to be desirable to have a formation letter for that.
And they're saying, why bother, I think.
Oh, yes. And other people that write. It's no question about it. It's a communicative tool. I'm not at all suggesting that in verbal articulation that the people refer to a double pass-through as a P or parallel waves as a W. Although I'm not against it, I'm not really hustling that. What I'm looking for is an accepted, common usage type thing. See, because I can go ahead in my note service and use whatever letter that I would like to use, and if Bill Peters wanted to do that, he could use another letter, and Lazary, if he wanted to use that, could use another letter, News and Notes could use another letter. They may not want to use letters, but if they did, they might opt for another letter, and I see no point in that. It's not any big deal. Let's use the same letter. And we came to that, which letter to use, by a certain amount of agonizing last year. Now the idea is to get that concept into enough of a universal acceptance so that everybody that needs to or desires to use it uses the same one. It's more a question of evoking consistency than any other one thing. And for those who don't need it, they don't have to have it. Can you why don't you use the mic there?
I think probably in order to have the caller acceptance, to start out small, let's say maybe 5 or 6 calls, because if you're talking a
you mean
letter,
formations now.
Formations,
yeah.
Right. I'm sorry. You've got your formations, and then you've got your 6, your 0, half, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Say if you go with a P, 1 half, and all the callers are not familiar with this, and you start out instead of, say, 1P, 2P line, and use your letter designation and put, say, 3 behind it. Most of the callers, if they're not
well, those are not
familiar
going to
with
be
it,
consistent. You're
Right.
you're mixing things now. I think we're going to eventually clean that up too, but we're not really addressing that situation.
okay.
But let's see if we can't make your point a little different way. Let me make a little speech first. It's going to turn out that, and we've seen this in note services, it's going to turn out that different from in the past, with more interest and emphasis in both note services and in schools to do what we call formation awareness drills and things that make newer callers aware of formations and arrangements. We're going to be talking about drills that take people from a number 1 line to a number 2 column. We're going to want to be able to talk about that and be explicit and precise. And we're not going to be worried about the detailed exact setup in which we're saying something about the rotation of the dancers and or something about the affiliation of the dancers. We're going to be unconcerned about that. And we're going to want to be able to talk about just the kind of arrangement line it is as such. So you wouldn't be getting into the 1P, 2P aspect. You'd be talking about a regular line or a common line or a number 1 line or a number 2 line, and then you may want to abbreviate that in a note service. After you've used it a couple of times, you may want to abbreviate it as just a 2L. We used an analogy the other day. It's like for any of you that are at all involved with computer stuff, when you first get onto a system, an editor or something like that, and you're unfamiliar with it, you very much like to have prompts written out in full text. But after you've used it for about a week or so, they become very annoying, and guys like terse prompts. And in most systems, there'll be an option that you can select terse or verbose, so to speak, and you can select one of those. And the abbreviation is sort of like a terse. After you've used it several times, particularly in a particular write-up or paragraph, you can go to the other, and people prefer that. They prefer that because it's they've understood the thing and they don't need the whole 9 yards anymore. Yes. Were you trying to make a comment? Oh, okay. All right. We don't have a large number of people, but how many would go for recommending a subset of that 12? Just say 6 or 7 or some number that we might come up with. We'll look at the list. How many think that's a better idea? Show of hands. How many think it's better to go with a few number? How many would think about going for the whole way? So we sort of have about 3 to 2. It's pretty close. Yeah.
Under all circumstances, I still think that the concept is what's necessary. So if, even though I want them all,
Yeah.
I don't have to have them all right now.
Yeah.
I can take them in little bitty
think
pieces if I have to.
that it would be more saleable to go with fewer number tomorrow?
I do.
How many think it'd be more saleable? Well, it looks like we have a large majority think it'd be more saleable. All right, let's assume then we're going to go for a subset. Let me read again the 12 that we had and see which, say 6 or 8 we'd go for the subset. The 12 we had were facing lines, 8 chain through, trade by, clockwise 2-face lines, parallel right-hand waves, double pass-through, completed double pass-through, right-hand diamonds, quarter tag, 3/4 tag, right-hand columns, and static square. Those were the 6 we had, the 12 we had. I'd be inclined to agree with that pretty much. Those are all very common, much used, mainstream formations. And the others are getting more use, but they're still less used. I guess the only possible, I'm not saying the only possible, well, no, I think that's a better selection. I was wondering about double pass-through versus right-hand columns, but I think the double pass-through is still probably further up front than the columns. I don't know. Okay. What do you think? Should we go with that, with those 7? Facing lines, 8 chain through, trade by, clockwise 2 face lines, parallel right-hand waves, double pass-through, and static square. Okay? All right, we'll go with that. And we'll make the resolution essentially the same as it was last year. Be it resolved that letter designations for the indicated formations be as indicated on the closed list for use on a 1-year trial basis. Okay? Probably would be a good idea. Although that with just 7, I can probably say those and. Yeah, we are. Well, that's our next subject, of course. Any more old business anyone thinks of that I haven't covered? All right, let's go to the new business. For those that didn't get, well, for everybody, I've made a slightly revised set of the formation pictures I gave out. Why don't you each take one? We can maybe hand those. I think there's enough there. Hand one out. Everybody got enough? Need one more? You got them? Okay. I had a couple of requests in the past year. One, interestingly enough, was from Ken Kernan of the Mainstream Basics Committee. He wanted a couple of more formations added, and I think we know why. I think it was very likely because of John Sobalski's input to them, which is, if any of you have seen it, or put it another way, if you haven't seen it, it was really a very thorough and in-depth analysis, which probably took them, that probably made them gasp a little bit, because I don't think they'd thought about things quite that deep before. But in the process, they probably came out with the realization that precision can be obtained by certain formation type definitions that isn't available any other way, and I think that was a plus. At any rate, we got requests to expand from those folks, and we also, with the new organization chart, formations, of course, are going to be supporting all levels. And so others said from the Advanced and Challenge Committee, we should start to pick up some of those formations. And so without trying to, again, be totally exhaustive and get everything that anyone might ever use or ever has used, I thought, well, we'll take another step and look at 20 more. And so I picked 20 and sent them out to everybody, and I got a couple of comments, not too many. I got a letter from John Jones, in which John said, gee, let's be careful that we don't, by publishing these formations, appear to recommend that mainstream callers use them. And I certainly agree we shouldn't appear to recommend that. In the same breath, it's been suggested that perhaps we ought to attach levels to the formations, and I'm very much against that, because I feel that formations transcend levels, and that we should not get hung up with the fact that a formation is a thing that can be looked up and understood, even though it's not necessarily and not at all used as a call. And that the thing that we're trying to do here are identify names for formations so that we can come up with an agreed upon name for the formation. and nothing more, really. And I think, and I made a little presentation to the executive board early Monday morning, and they seemed to go along with that. They had been concerned about that, and there was some concern expressed there, and I can't say it was unanimous, but the impression I got was, in fact, they started to work our problem for us, and somebody said, hey, that's a committee function, let them go work it. But it certainly, there was a lot of feeling that, yeah, formations could be handled in a way that did transcend levels, and we didn't have to get involved in saying a diamond formation is a plus level and a magic column is a C1 level and that kind of thing, because that, of course, gets very difficult for a couple of reasons that we've discussed before. One of them is, in just about all these formations, a caller can get into that formation with a mainstream call. And if he gets there and he doesn't recognize it or understand it, he might want to be able to do that just because of his own advancement, his own understanding, his own awareness. He'd like to say, oh yeah, I've never seen that before, but I see they're calling that a magic, or is there such a thing? He'd go over to the list and he'll look it up and he'll say, oh yeah, I see that thing I got into is a magic column. Gee, I didn't know I could get all I did was say slide through, and there they are in a magic column. And he wasn't maybe sure how he got there, but he could reconstruct that. And now he has a name for it, and he may not know anything else to do with it, but at least he'll be aware of it. He may even be able to now avoid it because he recognizes that he doesn't know how to handle it. And it all helps, I think, in giving the guy an opportunity to advance and know more and to understand what he is doing. There are those that say, gee, you're going to confuse those folks. And I really disagree. I think the guys out there, many of them are able to understand. They don't maybe have the opportunity. They may not address it a lot. But on the other hand, once they decide to, I think most of the guys can understand. They can look at that pictogram and they say, okay, I understand what that means, and I can handle that. I can understand it, and I know a little bit more than I did before. So in case we get some comment on the floor tomorrow, assuming we can agree on some names here, if we get comment on the floor against adding 20 more formations with the implication that that's going to complicate the program in the same sense that adding 20 calls to mainstream would do, I think we need to have arguments to counter that. I think it's better if the arguments come from the floor than if I try to do them from the podium, because that always sounds like it's defensive on the part of myself and or the committee. Whereas if it comes from the floor, it sounds more like a positive position rather than a defensive position. So I really like to ask you guys to think about these kind of things a little. We can think about them ahead of time, and we can even talk about them and get some arguments that can be presented in defense in case that comes up. I think we were not prepared for that last year, and I was somewhat delighted that the other things had gone by pretty well, and so when the letter symbols were shot down, I really made no argument against it. No one else did, and I figured, well, we'll do it this year. I would like to be prepared this time on these formations. I would like to not to have to go through that again next year just because of some artificial argument or because of some specious argument that really isn't appropriate. So I'd like to have us do some thinking ahead of time as to how why these things are really a valid step for us to take, and that we're not trying to swamp anybody with unnecessary information. It's going to be there to be used, and he doesn't, just like right now, the C1 list, as a list is printed, and he doesn't have to use it if he doesn't want to, but if he hears the word split counter rotate, he can look it up, and he can find a definition. And he can understand where it is and so forth. Here, if a guy sees interlocking blocks, he can go look at the thing and he can see what an interlocking block is, and he's not going to be confined or compelled to use it any more than any other. Yeah, John. Yes. Well, I realize that. I'm preaching to the crowd, but I'm trying to give us things to say tomorrow, okay? And I'm sure you guys can all say that maybe as well as I, but I want to make sure that we've sort of identified these points so that one or more of you can help out tomorrow. if the situation arises. Okay, let's go with let's go down the list now and see if we've got some different names that we want. These are names that I put on by virtue of thinking about them and also knowing what was the most common thing that had come to my mind, at least to date. So let's go down them. Now, one thing let me say is let's look at the first one, interlocking blocks. I think that's a pretty standard name, and I've got typical under there because in interlocking blocks we recognize right in the beginning that formation, as we use it, has two distinct aspects. One is geometry, and the other is facing direction. Now, interlocking blocks as such is a geometry, and the typical means that the facing direction is such that you could have one of those 8 or 9 or 10 two-couple formations within those interlocking blocks. All would be equally appropriate, like facing couples, box circulates, tandem couples. All those would be allowed inside or embedded in interlocking blocks, and we did not want to get into the gory detail of showing each one of those. That's the intent of the word typical. Now the question is that going to be, do we need to explain that, and we may want to do that, or what? Yeah.
Should we not make effective use? Might it not be appropriate to adopt the convention that some others have of either putting multiple heads on dancers who can be facing two ways, or omitting the heads entirely where it doesn't matter at all? So, for example, the interlocking blocks would just have 8 circles and the dotted lines, and that would be it. And
sure.
You could say typical or not.
Well, then it wouldn't be typical. It would be generic.
Yeah.
As opposed to typical, in my view, at that.
Fine.
With the facing couples, it can be called typical. Without the heads, it could be called generalized or generic family or something like that. Any thoughts on that?
I think, actually, I'd prefer them to be typical. If you think of the audience that's going to read this, okay, you're really not concerned about displaying to people who deal with these formations all the time the typical aspect. They know they're generic or whatever, okay? They know that the one shown is typical. There's an awful lot of folks who probably have never seen these and would like to at least think about how could I set it up as I see it in the picture. And I think it has value.
Any other comment? I guess I'm a little bit with Jay on this, John. I'm in favor of, in definitions and other related things, giving people at least one thing that's very specific to hang on to. I like the idea of the generalized things in many ways, but I also recognize that that's a reasonably sophisticated concept, and I have the feeling it's going to create more questions than it answers at this stage of the game. I could be wrong there. I personally am in favor of a typical rather than a generalized situation. And I think there's some merit also in what Jay says about the guys that are concerned about the box circulate formation, the tandem, the back-to-back and whatever, they know that, and they'll handle that. And the guy that's looking for, hey, just what is the fundamental thing you're getting at here, he'll see the facing couples and he'll be happy. And if he says, gee, what does typical mean? He may even ask himself the right question, or if he asks someone else, they can say, well, you can also have a box circulator, you can have back-to-back couples or whatever. So everybody agrees that interlocking blocks is a good name for that one. Okay, let's move from left to right across the top. Well, no, I think I got it more down the columns. I think I'm better. I set this up more in columns. Let's go down the column. Okay, we got tandem pair. I think that's probably pretty standard. Should we say tandem dancers? Tandem, or just simply tandem? Okay. All right. We'll go with just the word tandem only. I have no quarrel with that. And certainly below then, the facing tandems is appropriate. Now, I didn't have back-to-back tandems just because I didn't want to have too many things at once. I'm running out of room, so to speak, and yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so we got tandem and facing tandems. All right, the next one down was right-hand magic column. Now, in the magic column situation, I put right hand and left hand for a very specific reason. Namely, there has been confusion on people's part as to whether the handedness of the column, of the magic column, is the insides or the outsides. And this way should make it clear that it's the outsides that determine the handedness of the magic column. Now, there's one point that is interesting that I want to at least surface. Back in the first set that we put up 3-in-1 lines as a generic thing and said there are 8 possible. And we have in the past used 3-in-1 lines more in the lower levels, if you will, the prior levels, than we had 3-in-1 columns. But all of a sudden we're now in a situation where that I find interesting in that in the 3-in-1 column situation, we're coming up with names, specific names for at least 4 of the 3-in-1 columns, whereas in the 3-in-1 lines, we don't have any names for any of the specific ones. I found that interesting. I don't know. I'm not even looking for any answer or comment unless someone has something to think about. At any rate, obviously, magic columns are one category of 3-in-1 column. As later on, they're going to be 1/4 box and 3/4 box. Those 4 are really one category or one subset of the 8 3-in-1 columns that are possible. Okay, so we got right-hand column, magic columns, left-hand magic columns, no problem with those. The next one down there is offset blocks. Anybody have any problem with that? Now, Tommy, you had some comment on that as being not quite as not as used as some other term, which I have here, but you probably remember it. Well, I've got your thing here. I'll look it up. Tommy said in his area they didn't use offset blocks; they used another term. You said offset mini squares was what you had. I have felt that offset blocks is more common. Would you say that? Well, but if we give it a name, then maybe that'll make it more consistent. I think that across the country, offset blocks are more commonly used. Now, okay.
Yeah, in the interest, when you discovered this business about offset many squares, was it in all of the arrangements that is represented by the typical, or just the typical one?
You mean all
arrangements? Okay, in other words, all possible facing directions and all possible ways to offset?
Different word than arrangements, but okay.
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Well, okay.
All possible facing directions is what I meant.
I think that we're more or less agreed that the offset block is a way. Now, the only thing that has occurred to me that could be an additional thing that we've got to, and we've touched on in a couple other places. At some point in time, these offset blocks are also triple lines, triple waves, and I don't know that we need to address that here. I avoided it. I think that's one step further on, and maybe next year we show that and or show the correspondence or the correlation between that.
I think if you do that, you have to do it similar to the way you have the triple box done with the little phantom circles.
Yes, that's right. I agree. I agree that you would want to do that. I agree exactly. Yes. So let's not work the problem then of the of the triple line and its correspondence to triple box via this mechanism. We'll just give this name triple offset blocks and go with that. Okay, up at the top again we have the quarter box. That was a name that we suggested because it has a strong correlation to the quarter tag. And below it, of course, the three-quarter box being together. Yeah. By implication, if nothing else, do you feel that it's... do we need...
Do we have left-hand
Yes,
columns on
yes,
the
we do.
original list? Then we should
We have a
probably
lot of
continue.
left-hand things by implication, though. We do have a lot of left-hand things by implication. And I've got another one if you want. Jay, did you have another one there? Okay.
Is it all possible that people will, and it's just a thought in the back of my mind, I'm accustomed to reading note services that say box 1-4. Are people going to confuse a 1-4 or 1/4 box as being a turned around term?
Well, we're going to have to we're going to have to address that. I think if they are confused, they're going to have to eventually see the light. We could say on the quarter box and the three-quarter box something equivalent to the typical. That's not quite the same in that we're only talking about two alternatives, I think, right-handed and left-handed. Let's see, what did we do in some situations in that bill?
There's a reasonably strong set of logic that would say, since you show both right hand and left hand magic columns, that you would show both right and left hand one-quarter boxes.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I was just trying to see. At some points in time, though, we did in some places we did not show both just because of the volume involved, not because we were trying to be evasive or obscure, but simply because to do that correctly, we would now take two more blocks on this piece of paper. It's about as simple as that. Maybe we just do that, though, and
Or take the left-hand magic column off.
or no, there's a reason for that that transcends the left-hand quarter box. The other thing is, you might say we still have a limited set of formations here.
Just mark these ones right-handed. Right-hand quarter box and right-hand three-quarter box.
Great. I think
And
that
omit the left-hand
I think
ones from the left.
that then by implication they could go, okay, let's go that. Let's say right hand quarter box and right hand three-quarter box. I think that's a good idea. Right. Okay. Facing hourglass. Again, yes. You use a microphone, please, Ed. We're being taped.
I have to hit a number of different places and just want to
Yeah.
ask a question. Have you considered yet whether discussed on labeling the formations per level, or are you going to discuss that? Or not, or?
We discussed it briefly. We all were of the opinion that it should not be labeled according to levels.
Okay.
And we had such a quick agreement on it that we didn't spend much time on it. Okay, down to facing hourglass. Again, the typical. I don't know whether we could, because there's sort of only two. We might have called this. I wasn't sure what was the best way to handle that. Idea is that obviously if you do the facing hourglass circulate, you got the other one. So
Yes.
That's about where you are.
Well, your logic for all of the others being right-handed as shown would make this one right-handed as well.
Well, it is according to our right-hand diamond rule. The points determine the handedness, and that's true. And maybe we solve this by saying right hand facing hourglass. How about that, gang? Instead of typical, call this right hand facing hourglass.
Right.
I want to avoid having to show both of them simply because of a space situation. Excuse me? Well, okay, that's another possibility. What do you think about that? Am I being too conservative of paper, so to speak? If we said right hand here, right hand facing hourglass, is that? I think the implication again is very clear that there must be a left hand one, and they can do an hourglass circulate, and they got it. Let's go with right hand facing hourglass and take off the word typical.
Bill?
Yeah.
In all of the previously accepted formations,
Yeah.
you showed both right-hand waves, left-hand waves. Right-hand two-face lines, left-hand left-facing two-face lines, right-facing two-face lines.
Yeah, I know. We did. But these, these were...
I didn't say it was right. I said that's what we did.
These are much higher frequently used things. We're getting down to the less frequently used, and there's some that we haven't even got on here yet. I would say that if we felt strongly about this after a year, we can put out another sheet that's got the left hand. There's no reason... I agree it's not illogical to include them right at the same time, but it doesn't defy reason to delay the left hand 1 year. Unless we felt like in Magic Column it was very necessary to clear up which was the right hand facing hourglass and the left hand. Now there could be a point there. The other thing is I would also like to not hit these people with, again, too many at once. And the more pictograms we hit them with, I think the bigger impact it's going to have, and I'd rather take it. I don't feel that in this case there's any big rush. If we get the thing out there with a name accepted, then, say, for example, next year to show the other ones or whatever would be an easy step. Because the thing that we're looking for here, really, as much as anything, is the name facing hourglass as an accepted common name. And I don't think it's any big deal because I think most people use it that way. That's why doing it this time allows us to get this job done without too much emotional involvement, because there aren't too many names right now, too many other names accepted. Okay?
Are you ready to wrestle?
What?
Are you ready to wrestle?
About what?
Funny diamonds?
Funny diamond? Yeah. Let's go on to funny diamonds.
Okay, now our responses indicated that was probably an inappropriate term for a formation. Yes, the term, the actual F-U-N-N-Y by published word.
Who said that?
Colin.
What?
Colin Walton.
Oh, well, but I think he doesn't understand the situation, perhaps. But go ahead. Move on. What do you...
Okay. I don't have a good alternative.
Uh-huh.
Do you, Bruce?
3-in-1 facing diamonds.
Mm-hmm. 3-in-1 facing diamonds?
Yeah, then all you have to do is show one diamond. You don't have to have both of them. Just have three people going one way and the other person pointing in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, parents typical, right?
Well, I can buy that. I just felt that funny diamonds was in such common use.
I agree that it's very common use, but if people can't put up with the word funny, you can tell them that you got three people facing one way and one facing the other way.
But wait a minute. I'd like to go into that a little more. Just because one person says he can't doesn't mean that the world at large can't.
I think that by showing 3-in-1 facing diamonds, and then if they define funny diamond circulate as from 3-in-1 facing diamonds, the two facing people diamond
yes,
circulate.
I recognize it. We can establish that hierarchy, if you will, or protocol is a better word. We can certainly establish that.
At this point, we are defining
We're just coming up with a
before
name.
we're getting to definitions.
That's right. We're coming up with a name for a formation, and and we're looking for the most palatable, acceptable, appropriate name for the formation. And it doesn't have to be one that has been in general use, although that has some merit.
I would favor showing a single funny diamond. Since there's single as opposed to twin or double or rear vertical, all those. Yeah, there's yet with all the box facing in and the two-faced lines. So.
Okay. Let's. I don't mind that. 3-in-1 diamond should be pretty clear, and we can show just one of them.
Not 3-in-1 diamonds. 3-in-1 facing diamond.
Yeah. All right. 3-in-1 facing diamond. Right.
Because if you say 3-in-1 diamonds, all of a sudden you've got the possibility of this.
Yes.
Column of three.
Yes.
in one
Yes.
person.
Yes. What? I don't. Who in here objects to funny? Oh, but you may not be aware, Ron, that there is, that's an accepted call. It's on the list, and it's done from this formation. It's right on the C2 list, funny diamond circulate. And for whatever reason, that's an accepted call and name, which is exactly the reason, of course, we came up with this name for the formation. Like in other situations, trade by and others, 8-chain through, the formation took on the name of the call that generated that formation, or vice versa, for whatever reason. All right, I think we have two possible things. We've got funny diamonds, or we've got 3-in-1 facing diamonds. I'd like to.
Spence suggested we use both with funny and parens.
Okay. We have three alternatives, as I see it. We have calling out a funny diamond, a 3-in-1 facing diamond, or a 3-in-1 facing paren funny diamond. Of those three alternatives, I'll ask for a little vote on all three of those in sequence, okay? First of all, funny diamond by itself. Recognizing now that we're going to come up with all three, okay? First of all, funny diamond by itself. First of all, 0. 3-in-1 diamond by itself. Okay, it's clear what the answer is. The answer is 3-in-1 paren facing diamond. All right. A funny diamond. 3-in-1 paren. 3-in-1, let's see, how are we going to say that? 3-in-1 facing paren funny diamond. That's a little bit clumsy, but I guess that's the way we've got to say it.
You could also factor out funny and say 3-in-1 facing diamond, paren funny diamond.
We could also do that.
Which might be less awkward.
I'd like that better. Even though it's more words, it trips off the tongue a little better. All right. All right. Yes, we'll only be showing one diamond. So there won't be any plural on it. It'll be funny diamond, 3-in-1. It'll be 3-and-1 as opposed to 3-by-1. 3-in-1 facing. Okay. Moving right along, the next one is interlocked diamonds. We recognize that that's also a funny diamond, but it also is a very, even at a more strong association with the interlock, so I would go for interlock diamond as that name. Even though it is a category of funny diamond or 3-in-1 diamond, it is also an interlock. And so I did draw the arrows in, the lines in subsequently to distinguish that from just another funny diamond. Okay, we'll stay with the interlock diamonds. Yeah, we'll do it. Right hand. Right hand. Interlock diamonds. Okay, moving up, we got butterfly. Yes. Well, I understand that, and let's talk about it. I felt that to some extent the butterfly also implied some restriction on facing direction versus the X. In the same sense that trade by is different from a column.
I don't see any restriction on the facing direction in the butterfly. The only restriction I see is when the guy says X circulate from a butterfly type of position, those two centers having to cross over rather than going straight ahead.
Uh-huh. So you feel that we really, from a formation standpoint, although we have different calls, from a formation standpoint, we merely need either X typical or butterfly typical. Which one are we going to go for?
I suggest we do it again with the parens. Butterfly paren X or vice versa, I don't much care.
And then paren typical.
And paren typical.
Okay. I have no quarrel with that.
Well, the more frequently occurring one, though, happens to be the X and not the butterfly.
I don't know that that's really true. I think that's...
It depends on usage, I agree.
I think that I don't think enough statistics have been taken on that to...
Okay, I think I still favor X as the top line on the printed page. You can put butterfly any place you wish, okay? And the typical underneath, okay? But I think the X belongs on the top.
Any other comment?
No quarrels.
All right, we'll go with that. We'll scratch the... We'll scratch that butterfly formation pictogram altogether and use the X pictogram with the word butterfly under the X and typical. No, I'm going to put the butterfly after the X. I'll have enough room to do that. I'll say X, paren butterfly, and typical underneath. Okay? And scratch the butterfly pictogram, which will give us room if we want it on this page to add another one if we think we need to. Maybe we'll find one that... Yeah.
I'm sorry. I got a feeling about this too. If you're really going to show the butterfly, I think I would use the butterfly pictogram and modify the words and the terms under the butterfly pictogram and scratch the one shown as big X or X. That's just a recommendation.
Well, I don't...
Do you see why? Why I'm trying to say that? Oh, all right.
I see what you're saying. I don't see any strong...
Oh, okay, you do have butterfly circulate. And you have an X circulate. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you're going to say that a butterfly is also a part of the X family, if you will, then I would think X should be the thing that's shown and put the butterfly in parens, typical underneath, but the pictogram that's actually shown is the one that you're trying to say, oh, by the way, it's a butterfly.
From the second formation, the bottom one, which is right now the X with the two-centered dancers looking at each other as a couple, you can do either X circulate or butterfly circulate. If you showed only the butterfly formation up above, which is the spread apart columns, you wouldn't be able to do you could do it, but not typically the X circulate from that position. So perhaps the second formation is the one that should be used.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. We got the next
Okay, I
one.
agree. I'll cave.
Yeah. Yeah, on the tape. Get that tape. We have funny hourglass, typical. Now, maybe we ought to make that right-handed, or I don't know. That's a little
Here we
harder.
go with the word funny.
What?
Here we go with the word funny.
Right. Well, you can't really. It's not 3 and 1. It's 6 and 2. You see, you can't separate those like you do the other. What? I'd be inclined to leave it at funny. We didn't. I don't know that we got any objection about that.
We did somewhat define what funny meant when we talked about diamonds.
Sure. That's a good point. We've established the precedent there. We're going into it one step at a time. I struggled with the idea, instead of using typical, to get involved in whether or not that center diamond was facing or regular as a way of defining, but I thought that started to get cumbersome in my mind, so that's why I left it at typical. I sort of copped out there in my own mind slightly. Maybe you guys have some better ideas there.
With all the 3 and 1 lines, we specifically said 8 possible, did we not?
Yes.
Might we not do something like that with all of these where it's, there aren't really...
I think there's 4 possible, aren't there? You can have those points facing out or in.
Or left-hand or right-hand box.
Or left-hand or right-hand box, and you have the diamond either facing or left-hand or right-hand. I guess we've got 8, haven't we? We've got 8.
Got 8, rather than 32 or 64.
Yeah, I think we've got 8.
I would be inclined to do that with all the funny what's it.
Okay, I'll go with that. Let's say 8 possible, and leave out the word typical. 8 possible.
Ditto the funny diamond.
John, just because you may have a little more time than me, would you just make a quick dolly check and make sure that 8 is the number? I think it is, but not necessarily right now, maybe a little later, so that we get through I want your inputs on the rest of the things, but just before tomorrow. I can change that with one stroke of the pen. So you don't have to do it right now, but sometime between now and tomorrow, check that 8 is indeed the number on 8 possible. And the reason I'm a little suspicious is that with the other 8s, we've always had, they were basically a 4-dancer thing, and this is definitely an 8-dancer thing, and I'm a little, it strikes me. Okay, the next one down the line there is Big O. I put the big in parentheses with a slight tongue-in-cheek thing. I already had one comment on it. Does anybody else have a... and I had a slightly more than tongue-in-cheek reason, and that is that we also have, in addition to what we call the octagon O, we've got what you might call the hexagon O. And I didn't want to get into that, and I wanted to leave open the possibility of giving it a similar but different name. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, but I think this is typically called an O.
Yeah.
This is what's commonly meant, and
I
would make that unmodified. There is another point. There is another thing which is an O. I don't know what you do with it. Static square, everybody quarter left.
Yes.
And you have an O. And that's not quite a reverse single file promenade.
That's right. And it occurred to me that we might use the typical thing again here. And the only reason I didn't was I didn't want to potentially confuse the geometry problem with that facing problem. I guess I shouldn't worry about that. We've made it reasonably clear by consistency that that when we say typical, we're staying within the same geometry, change facing direction. Okay, let's just take out the word big then and call this the O formation and leave my tongue-in-cheek comment off. Yeah, I think we should do that. I find no problem with that. O typical. Okay, down to parallelograms. Now again here, we know that we can have parallelograms offset by different than just 2, but I felt just to get into the thing first and for not getting too many, that I just show the 2 offset parallelograms, offset by 2. And I think certainly that that's the appropriate name. Anybody have any comment on that? Okay, we'll just move on then from parallelogram. The next one up on the upper right is Siamese. Yeah, what?
Asymmetric hourglasses.
Hey, good, okay. Okay, we're working on Siamese on the upper right-hand corner. That's the one that we've also called as couple and in tandem, which was, I felt, a cumbersome thing, and so Siamese had a certain amount of acceptance. I guess it was mixed, but at any rate, there it is. I like it. Any comment on that? It's certainly typical. Again, it's all the 2-couple formations are available there. That's why typical. Okay?
You don't like that cumbersome as couples and in tandem, do you? Does anybody?
Okay. Well,
I'll be glad to accept this instead of that. Are you going to call Siamese goodbye? Yeah, that's true. He does. Poisson.
well, I don't. I think we don't have to solve that problem here. If this eventually influences that, so be it. I think that if we've got a good name here, a reasonable name.
The question is, how common is this? How common is this formation?
You mean, is it appropriately at this in terms of frequency of use? Is it more frequently used than something that's currently not on here? Oh, I realize that. We all recognize that. We're naming the formation though here. Trying to come up with a formation name that, I hate to have a whole sentence for the name of a formation.
It's merely a funny instance of phantom, by the way.
Yes. But we don't use it. We don't want to call it phantom, I don't think, either.
Well, it do depend on what you're using it for. I mean,
Well, because of the as couples and in tandem concept that we use quite extensively, I think that it's appropriate to have, I felt at least, it was appropriate to have a formation that showed the 2 sets of couples in tandem and 2 sets of couples as couples, and they can then operate in typical 2-couple movements, facing couples, box circulates, and whatever.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right, moving then on to the next, the phantom. I did have the comment here that on phantom, as I've shown it with typical, I intended the typical to cover the phantom waves versus phantom couples versus phantom lines and so forth. Someone has put on their phantom waves, which is certainly what this is. But the typical, I felt, in the same sense as the facing couples on the interlocking blocks, I didn't say interlocking blocks facing couples typical. So here I would say phantom typical. Any comment on that? Okay. Well, should we move on then? We recognize it all through this. The typical means facing direction can change geometry. Mixed column and line. Now I sort of, that name I don't feel strongly about, and I don't even know if there's a better one around or what. I did hear someplace split T-bones or something like that.
Is there some reason for distinguishing the two of these?
I don't know that there is, as a matter of fact. I did have, let's see, what was my rationale?
And if we do, should we not distinguish the four-person versions?
I wanted to distinguish. We've of course shown T-bone on the other list, and we implied by that. I think we said 8 possible or something, whatever it was, and we implied by that the the two sets facing either 0 or 180. We didn't show any 90-90-90s like this. And so I wanted to show some. And again, there are more than the two. And I was sort of fishing for a logical way to show just a couple without showing all of them. So I came up with the idea, perhaps a little artificial, of mixed line and column versus mixed column and line, which it was obviously an artifice. Or I shouldn't say obviously. It was an artifice on my part to distinguish between those two in terms of putting the word column first in the case of the upper one, where the lower left-hand dancer, if you will, in my pictogram, was in that case in a column, and in the other case he was in a line. And I'm not going to defend it any more than that. That was a rationale that I used to help, if you will, justify the name, because I didn't have a good name for that, and I sort of wanted one. Maybe split T-bone. You guys tell me.
How about just more T-bones, however many are possible, and show a couple of 90-degree ones?
More, he said. That's obviously not the name he's proposing.
There are obviously instances of the concept T-bone.
Yes, they are. When taken as single two dancers, you couldn't tell between these and any other T-bones if you looked at just two dancers. It's when you look at the composite that they appear different, but I don't know that it's, maybe it's, I felt it was worthwhile because we seemed to delimit in the other one. If you recall the other T-bone formations that we showed that in-facing and out-facing T-bones type of thing, and the implication there was that the dancers did not alternate in a given line. They were two in one way and two together in another way. What are you suggesting that we show, say, just one of them and say just say T-bones?
T-bones 4 to the 4th possible.
Well, of course, that we'd have to subtract the other 8 or 16 that we've already put in.
4 to the 4th minus 16 possible.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, my agonizing was not all that inappropriate. The only other thing that I could think of doing was just begging the question by avoiding it right at the moment, and I didn't feel that was appropriate either. So I.
Well.
Oh yeah, the guy.
This kind of formation is used a lot.
Sure.
It's typically called a T-bone.
Typical T-bone circulates are done here quite often.
We're beginning to feel, comes back to my hobby horse, the lack of a naming hierarchy. And it's clear that this falls under the general heading T-bones.
Yes.
As do in-facing and out-facing T-bones.
Yes, right. That's right. Someone suggested split T-bones. I don't. I'm not totally very much enamored of that. It certainly is a. The others are split too. You know, that's the only thing.
Yeah, my inclination would be to show 4 people, say T-bone box, and your typical.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, Bruce, let me just show you.
It says impossible or something. There aren't very many possible, actually. There's only one possible for each of them. Lines. Oops.
We were basically we were concerned somewhat about the mainstream versus advanced challenge syndrome a little bit, and we didn't want to overpower this thing with a lot of formations. The guys were going to say, we don't use these, and so why are you giving us that much paper on those? I don't. Of course, you know there's a big one of the things we recognize. There's a big advantage of doing this at the point when we don't have emotion involved, and that is that we can come up with, if we can, a reasonably logical solution. No one's going to get upset about it, and then after a couple of years, if it's used, it'll be okay with everybody. So I think that if we can come up with logical, that's going to be good enough here, or appropriate, if not logical. Yeah, Jane.
I think I favor John's. Show a 4-dancer T-bone box. Typical. I think T-bone box is better. And the reason I believe that is because in all of our infinite wisdom, when we were talking about the T-bone lines, we tended to restrict it to the line considerations, even though we all knew that that wasn't all that was possible.
All right, let's how about that then? We can go. We'll reduce this to 1, make it a 4-dancer pictogram, and I would probably go for the one down below, the bottom one, and show that particular one and say T-bone box typical.
Typical means that they can, in their own mind, change the facing direction of the dancers.
Yes.
I don't think you can allow them to just take those dancers and turn their facing direction, because then you won't end up with T-bones if they don't move them all the identical distance, or if they only move 2.
Well, they've got to be. It's got to be a symmetric.
Well, the one above is 2 out and 2 in. One below is 4 in.
Right. Yeah.
You got 2 right and 2 left.
No, I think the guys usually think of them in terms of in and out. That's at least that's the way I do.
Are you assuming that the T-bone situation, which has 2 people facing, if you're looking at the foursome there, you've got 2 people looking at your left, both of the left hand, the upper and lower looking to the left, and the other 2 looking, say, up and down. That, the thing that looks like this. You're assuming that that's covered by your line definition?
Yes. That was my assumption.
We're not going after that one.
Yes, we're not going after that one. That's correct. Well, okay. Why don't we call it box T-bone typical? And what? T-bone box. Fine. T-bone box typical. T-bone box typical, and I'll show just the in-facing one.
It's been suggested that if we've got space in a block that we show several.
Well, we obviously have some space. We've got the 2 that we've got right now. We could show T-bone box in-facing, T-bone box in and out facing, and T-bone box all out facing. That'd be 3.
Right.
Excuse me, why don't you say that on the microphone, Bruce?
What I'm saying is that by showing the 3 different formations,
yes.
the in, the out, and the 2 one-way, 2 the other way,
yes.
2 in, 2 out, that doesn't give the caller, who then sees the word typical under there, the opportunity of turning 2 people and ending up with a box circulate or facing couple.
Yes,
whatever.
yes, that I think. Okay.
We could typical.
Okay, I'll do just exactly that. We'll say 2 bone box in, out, just for my own purpose, and I'll have both. One of them, yeah, half and half. Excuse me?
I.e. 3 pictures and one caption that says T-bone box.
Yes.
Just T-bone box.
T-bone box. The in, the out, and the whatever will, I don't even know if we need to write that down. Yeah, just show them. Right, okay, I agree. All right, so there'll be 3 mini pictograms, and maybe what I'll do is I'll think about that. I may just stick them into those 2 places that are in there now with 3. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, this will help do that. Just uh-huh. You'll know it's a T-bone box now. Yeah. Except the people don't ever find the requirement to articulate the in or the out. That's just a I said that. That is... Good. That's a good idea, honey. We'll do that. I can't say it's of no value.
I think the idea we're trying to get across is people facing different orientations, and we don't want to bog down in having to identify the however many possible different T-bones there are.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, oh, yeah, there, yeah. Might we say 24 possible?
Mm.
I'll show 3, and we'll go for that for this year. Okay, the last one that I've got shown here is triple box, and I decided to show one triple box thing, and that sort of is, in a way, sort of the next step along. I don't know how you feel about that.
Did we have all that much usage with the triple box and the triple line and
Do
all
what?
that good kind of stuff? We got that much usage
Oh,
with it?
yeah.
Yeah, not below C2, but...
No, not below. That's
Okay.
right. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of use there.
Okay, now I'm not into C2, so I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of use. The
Okay, I'm beginning to think that maybe we're pumping a lot in a hurry. Well, for the guys who are into it, it's not. But the quantity of guys that are into it
don't
is pretty
forget,
small.
again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get names. These names are already accepted in, Burleson has them. I've had them in the notes. I've had them in other places, and other guys have had them. They aren't CALLERLAB accepted names. And that's all we're looking for here is a CALLERLAB acceptance of the name for the formation. We're not looking for endorsement of the use of the thing at the advanced level or some other such thing. We're looking for the name, acceptance of the name triple box as the name of that formation. Now, the argument that I will accept is, there's another formation that I've overlooked here, that we've overlooked, that is more appropriate to take that next spot. Or we can go with one less this time. There's nothing that says we have to have 20 or 19 or any particular number. We can just leave that off altogether and use that, get into that the next time around, whenever that might be.
Are you talking about AC/DC once and a half?
No, not necessarily.
Not that one? Okay. It's the one I'm after. I don't have a name for it yet.
That's his point is that a more common formation that we need a name for?
I think so. Than triple boxes, as a matter of fact. But I'm not into C2, so